Hi, everyone. Welcome back to SeaKeepers' Voyages of DISCOVERY. I'm your host, Katie Sheehan, and it feels so great to be back after a break, and at a time when the oceans need us now more than ever. From now on, you can expect more regular episodes from us as we share the stories the world desperately needs to hear, and we're jumping right back in with a conversation that couldn't come at a more critical time. Right now, I'm in Washington, D.C., where ocean leaders, scientists, policymakers, and advocates are gathered for Capitol Hill Ocean Week, hosted by the National Marine Sanctuary Foundation. It's one of the most important ocean policy events in the United States, and it's no coincidence that this episode is dropping during the conference. World Oceans Day is just days away on June 8th, and this year it carries a deeper urgency than ever. Our ocean is under pressure like never before. Climate change, overfishing, pollution, and loss of biodiversity are pushing marine ecosystems to the brink. But there is hope, and it starts with protection. That's where the National Marine Sanctuary Foundation comes in. They're the force behind some of the most important marine protected areas in the country, spaces where life is given the chance not just to survive, but to thrive. From coral reefs to kelp forests, from endangered whales to tiny plankton, these sanctuaries safeguard biodiversity, support coastal economies, and connect communities to the sea. I'm joined by two ocean leaders from the National Marine Sanctuary Foundation, TJ Tate, the Foundation's Director of Conservation, and Cortney Benson, their Marine Debris Removal Stewardship Coordinator. Together, they offer a powerful look at how marine protected areas, our national marine sanctuaries, serve as living laboratories, refuges for biodiversity, and anchors for coastal resilience. This is more than a conversation about conservation. It's a look at how we create a sustainable future. It's a call to action. And it's a celebration of the people and policies making a difference. Let's dive in and protect what protects us. Hi, Cortney. Hi, TJ. Thank you both so much for joining. TJ, I'd love to know a little bit about your background, what you do, where you're based, and what the National Marine Sanctuary Foundation is.
Sure. Thanks so much, Katie. Really appreciate being on with you today. I'm the Director of Conservation for the National Marine Sanctuary Foundation. I've been in conservation, particularly around fisheries, for over 25 years now. Lived in a couple different places, from California, working on fisheries out there in the Gulf of Mexico, working on conservation and fisheries there. And this is the dream job, being able to protect 18 national marine sanctuaries from Chattanooga, Tennessee, which seems a bit odd, but it allows me to hop on a plane and travel to all these amazing places. And the National Marine Sanctuary Foundation, for those who don't know, we are the nonprofit to the sanctuary marine system, which there are 18 of them. And if you pretty much hop into water anywhere off of our coastline, you are probably going to be in or adjacent to a sanctuary. And if you think of sanctuaries, they are essentially like the national parks of the ocean, but they're really treasured places. It's something that we love to shout the message about, how we protect them, conserve them, why you should get in them and enjoy them. And we work to protect these places for all the benefits that they allow to all of us and people just like yourselves. And I know you've been in several of them, Katie, so you've had that opportunity to hop in and enjoy and really think about protecting all this sensitive habitat and wildlife. That's what we do. We want to drive local economies through protection and conservation of these treasured resources.
Now, being based in Tennessee, what national marine sanctuary would you say is the one you frequent the most?
Over the last couple of years, it's been the Florida Keys National Marine Sanctuary, where Cortney is located, and she'll fill you in on that in a minute, because we do have a lot of projects down there, from marine debris removal, which is Cortney's wheelhouse, so I won't step on her toes, coral restoration. We're engaging in some seagrass restoration. So it's just such a vibrant ecosystem with so many important projects and work that needs to be done with the community and also with the millions of tourists who visit every year. The other, being really close to me, is Gray's Reef National Marine Sanctuary. It's off the coast of Savannah. I was just down there a few weeks ago. It's the calving ground for North Atlantic right whales. There's only 370 left anywhere in the world. So for us at the foundation, that's become priority number one, of really engaging with the community, engaging with scientists, with technology, which I'll touch on a little bit later, to protect these iconic and critically endangered species.
It sounds amazing. And I am also a landlocked marine scientist. I'm from Colorado originally and actually headed back there soon. So it's a really cool specialty to be able to protect and love the ocean from a landlocked state.
It just shows you can be from absolutely anywhere and take care of something that you love and that is a benefit to all of us, which the ocean is. So agree. And we've got to shout it out to all those landlocked lovers that even if you're not there, there are tools, there's virtual reality. There's, you go on vacation, you have your spots that you love. And so it should be all of us, whether you're living on the coast or you're in somewhere like Colorado or Chattanooga.
Now, Cortney, you are on the coast. You're based in the Florida Keys. So I'd love to hear a little bit about your background, what brought you to the Florida Keys and to your work with the National Marine Sanctuary Foundation.
Yeah, so I'm based in Key West right now, but I've lived in the Florida Keys for 7 years, which makes me a freshwater conch if you're local. You have to stick around for a while before you get the designation.
Well, that's cool.
Yeah, I was brought to the Florida Keys for scuba diving. I was a dive master and a dive instructor at a dive shop here. And I was introduced to the National Marine Sanctuary Foundation through my work at the dive shop. We were offered awards to do marine debris removal. And I just fell in love with taking care of the ocean in that way. Diving is fantastic, but when you can dive with a bit of a purpose and do something good for the space that you love while you're down there, it's just that much more exciting. So that brought me over to the foundation side of things. And now I run the Gold Clean Seas program. From the foundation side, we co-manage it with the Florida Keys National Marine Sanctuary. So yeah, on my end of things, I try and find funding for our dive operators to keep their important work going.
So what does a day-to-day in your life look like? I mean, I'm sure every day is a little bit different.
And that's nice. I appreciate the variability of it. But basically, I work with the dive operators to get them onboarded for Gold Clean Seas. We have 20 dive operators in the Florida Keys that participate, come and go a little bit with turnover of dive shops, of course. But on a given day, probably about 20 participate. And it's really nice to have that engagement from them. But my job on a daily basis, it's either bringing in new shops or working with the ones that we already have, looking for funding opportunities. And then sometimes I get to go out and actually do the dives with them, which of course is my favorite, and help train them in person on what man-made materials we're removing and why, and what we're leaving behind and why. If there's debris that already has coral growing on it, it's already a living ecosystem. That's something different that we're going to leave behind. But yeah, it's a little bit of a different day to day based on what we have going on.
And I would say, Katie, we call her the trash queen, or that's her self-designated title. Anything that is trashy is Cortney. And that is
We love trash.
passion. That is her passion to really help people understand and work with all these dive operators. And it has really become an iconic program for the foundation in partnership with the Florida Keys National Marine Sanctuary. And Cortney is that glue. She is that missing piece that at the foundation we didn't have to really drive this change and drag out all the trash and then work with the partners down there to understand why we need to remove this and how you remove it safely. So to me, she has the coolest job in the whole organization.
I would agree.
I know, it sounds amazing. And I'd love to get into some of the plastic pollution in a minute. But before we get into that, imagine an ocean without plastic. What would the Florida Keys National Marine Sanctuary look like, and what type of life would it hold versus maybe what it does now?
I think one of the biggest ecosystems that's affected, well, there's several, but some of the ecosystems that are most affected by the debris that we face here in the Florida Keys would be our coral reefs and then our seagrasses. So one of the biggest items of marine debris that we find is derelict lobster traps. And so when they sit on a seagrass bed, they will kill the seagrass that is underneath it if they stay there for any extended period of time. And it's really interesting because when those gaps in seagrass then exist, organisms can't cross it. They can't cross from seagrass over sand to more seagrass. So it really starts to disrupt the ecosystem of the seagrass beds. And then, of course, with coral, often boaters run over these styrofoam buoys that are on top of the water for the traps. And then the line falls down, which is a plastic line, and it entangles coral. Then storms come, and that 90 to 100-pound lobster trap is then rolling over coral and breaking pieces off. The coral in the Florida Keys has been suffering for many years. We have had stony coral tissue loss disease, and then we've had heat waves. So we don't need the addition of marine debris also killing coral that we have here. So without marine debris, I think we would have a healthier, thriving coral reef and seagrass ecosystem.
And fisheries. I would also add in there fisheries, because seagrass is so important also for this nursery ground of so many juveniles. So when that is destroyed or harmed, then you're thinking about all these different species that may start their lives in the seagrass that are such an important part of the ecosystem. But then from even a consumer standpoint, and Cortney can chime in a little bit later about the microplastics cruise that she just did, thanks to you guys. Those microplastics, as we all know, get into fish. Fish are going to eat them. Turtles are going to eat the microplastics. So it is a trickle-down effect from microplastics to the larger scale marine debris that Cortney's talking about, which are damaging pretty much every part of the ecosystem, from the coral to the seagrass to the fisheries that are a major part of that ecosystem overall.
And the endangered mangroves, I didn't even mention that.
The mangroves, get that.
Yeah, the amount of the polyline that we pull from mangroves that's entangled would blow your mind. It's so insane how much of it ends up there. And those mangroves are super important to the Florida Keys.
Yeah.
And even as a tourist, so every time I go down, I play Jane Tourist, not just working, to really see what people are saying in the Florida Keys when they take you out as a tourist. And I went on a kayak trip 2 years ago, I guess. And everywhere that we kayaked around, and it was mangroves, there was marine debris in the mangroves. And it was very disheartening to see that.
Man, it's so interesting to hear about plastic pollution being such a big issue for the mangrove ecosystems, the seagrass ecosystems, the coral reefs. Now, the issue of plastic pollution, I'm sure, is an issue that all national marine sanctuaries are facing. So I want to jump back a little bit and ask first. We've talked about marine protected areas, and we've talked about national marine sanctuaries. TJ, can you explain what the difference might be between those two, or maybe a national marine sanctuary is a marine protected area and what that means?
Well, first, if you're going to become a national marine sanctuary, that's really led by the community. That's the community saying, we love this very special place. We want to protect it. And so that's a very unique way of protecting something that you love. Marine protected areas and marine sanctuaries, truly the only main difference, well, one is how it gets designated, but then two are the layers of protection. When you think about a national marine sanctuary, it is not a no fishing zone. It is not a no access zone. And so that's why we think of it kind of like a national park. Sanctuaries are open. We want people to access it and come in and enjoy and use them as test beds for solution and innovation and how we can solve some of these problems like microplastics. Some MPAs have additional layers of regulation on top of it, where there could be a no fishing zone or a no access zone. And so it can be, not always, but a little bit more restrictive. Where within our sanctuaries, there's a lot of science going on to know what's happening there, but we also want the citizen science. So it really comes down to, it's a park, get in it, enjoy it, and be a steward while you're there to continue learning, just like Cortney was talking about, learn about the marine debris and how you can be a part of the solution. And that's what sanctuaries are all about. They're solutions.
I love that. And it's not just this offhands area that's being protected or maybe heavily regulated where people can't access it. And I know it's important to have those spaces for life in the ocean. But I love the idea of national marine sanctuaries being a place where people go to connect to nature and to understand that they have a relationship with it and gain that personal value to it. So that's a really special quality for those.
It is. And I think a lot of people don't recognize that. When they hear the word sanctuary or protection, they immediately think of it as a no-fly zone. I can't get in there. And sanctuaries are just the opposite. So it's a really important message to carry home. And hopefully all your listeners are going to say, yay, I want to get into a sanctuary now. I know that I can. It's a misunderstood concept, I think. And so that's where we keep beating that drum. Come visit us. Come see these amazing 18 places. Meet Courtney. She'll take you out so that you can understand the ecosystem and how to help. Like you said, even if you're in Colorado.
Yeah, and the communities really have a stake in what those layers of protection are. Every time a new decision is made about what should change in these protected areas, the whole community is invited in to give their opinion on it and what works for us and what doesn't. So it's really, like TJ was saying, just very community-based protection.
Yeah, that's really important. That's so cool. Now, you mentioned that the way that these areas are designated as national marine sanctuaries often comes from the community, just like the protections and the activities. So do you have any interesting stories about people who have brought these spaces to your attention to say, hey, we really need to protect this space? And then that led to a national marine sanctuary?
So I think one of the neatest examples right now is a brand new sanctuary. It's Chumash Heritage National Marine Sanctuary. So it's off the coast of California, and it is led by a tribe, the Chumash tribe. And it is their culture, it is their livelihood, it is their resource, and they want to protect and conserve this amazing place where they live, where they work, where they feed themselves from, that is who they are. It's not just a place, it is a part of who they are. And so they brought this forward, came several attempts, and we finally got it designated. And it's a very special place to these people because they are so committed to this area where they live that they couldn't imagine it any other way. So it was a very passionate designation, I would say. All of them folks are excited to have something designated, but this one was really led by culture and passion, which I think is pretty cool.
What type of traditional knowledge did they help contribute that helped it become a national marine sanctuary? We talk a lot about the scientific knowledge, things like published papers and environmental impact assessments, all the research that we go out and physically do. But communities like this have generations of experiences and learning just by living and being involved in these ecosystems. So was there anything in particular, any knowledge that they contributed that was really impactful for its designation?
I think it's every single thing. Because they are a tribe and they're the first tribally nominated sanctuary, well, anywhere in the system, but also in Central California. So it was really taking their knowledge as a tribe, what it means to them, and being able to communicate that, why this needs to be an area that is protected. And it really comes back to there are huge oceanographic features that are there, habitat, but that it's a sacred space to the Chumash tribe. Mm-hmm. And that, I think, was one of the most important things. So without diving into real specifics from the oceanographic side of it, there's nutrient upwelling. There's very deep waters there, which are interesting from a world significance. But to them, it's really just a part of who they are. And I think that's what they brought to the table of, yeah, this is important from a science perspective, but they have been around for 20,000 years. And so this is their home, multi-generational home. And I think that's the most important thing.
That's a great story. What types of educational and hands-on activities do you get those types of communities and the greater public involved to get them out and exploring the national marine sanctuaries?
Yeah. Port is designing some recreational and tourism opportunities right now.
Amazing. I'd love to hear about them.
Well, I told you a little bit about Gold Clean Seas, which basically that's where we take the community and recreational scuba divers out to remove marine debris off the reefs. We also have iconic reef guardians here in the Florida Keys. And in this program, people get to go out and see coral nurseries, offshore coral nurseries that are growing coral, which is amazing as it is. And then eventually they get to do a little bit more hands-on assistance in research. They get to monitor the corals, pull yellow-footed snails off the corals, things like that, maybe eventually even outplant them. But we have recently started a program called Sanctuary Guardians. Here at the National Marine Sanctuary Foundation, we want anything that's good for the sanctuaries. And so we are very big in the community, and we went out to all of our community partners who are doing anything good for the sanctuary. And it's a really broad range of things. It's not just coral and debris, but we've got people that are growing and outplanting or planting mangroves. We have people who are stenciling drains to remind people that it drains to the ocean so that they're mindful of not throwing trash onto the ground. What we've done is we've gone and interviewed all of these different organizations and the work that they're doing and compiled it into a website that we're going to post in June of this year. And it's going to invite tourists who come to the Florida Keys to participate in regenerative tourism. So when they get here, they're not just taking a vacation, going on a dive, enjoying the Florida Keys, but they're also giving back while they're here. And this gives them a purpose and a reason to come back again and again. If you outplant a coral on the reef here and you know the coordinates of where it's at, you get to come check on that coral next summer and see how it's doing, and the summer after that and how much it's grown. So it's really good thing for the economy here to keep bringing people back, and great for awareness. They go back to wherever they live in the US or internationally, and they spread that awareness of how important the ocean is to everyone, regardless of where you live. So Sanctuary Guardians, that's the purpose of it, is bringing together the visitors, giving them an opportunity to participate in those things while they're here, and also bringing the businesses and nonprofits that are locally here in the Florida Keys together to participate more in offering these opportunities for visitors to participate in regenerative tourism.
It is called Sanctuary Guardians, and we chose that name for a very specific reason. Essentially, you're an ambassador for the entire sanctuary. And that's what we want people to feel when they step into the sanctuary, that they are there to guard and protect this. And they are doing that through some of the mechanisms that Cortney just said, but really finding out who these people are and how they can engage. And we're just piloting right now this concept in the Florida Keys because we have Cortney on the ground. We have another colleague, JD Reinbott, who manages that iconic Reef Guardians program. So we have those key members who are engaged in the community. But we are going to take this throughout the sanctuary system because every single place is inherently different. If you're to look at Thunder Bay, which is up in Alpena, Michigan, and that city is driven by the sanctuary. They even have a pub named after the sanctuary. I mean, it is so ingrained within the community, and being able to further engage those businesses, but also those tourists who want to get out. They want to see the wrecks. They want to scuba dive the wrecks. And people don't think about in our Great Lakes. They want to be a part and get on the water. And it's gorgeous water up there. You just don't want to go in the winter.
Yeah.
But this will be the pilot that happens here, and then we will launch it in each individual sanctuary so that no matter what part of the country you're in or what your interest is, that we can engage you to become a sanctuary guardian.
Oh, that's so interesting. Now, these national marine sanctuaries, what are the types of environments that they range from, and what can you expect to see in some of these different ones? So I know we've covered a lot of the coral in the Florida Keys National Marine Sanctuary. What about some of the others around this country, and how do people get into them?
Oh, it's very diverse. As I just mentioned, you have the Great Lakes. So we have several different locations in the Great Lakes. That's obviously cold, fresh water, so completely different environment. And those are really centered around a number of shipwrecks because maritime heritage is a big part of the foundation as well, which also sadly taps into our marine debris program because we need to conserve those artifacts that should be there in perpetuity. But if you go up to the Washington coast in Olympic Coast National Marine Sanctuary, totally different environment, obviously, than what you're going to find in the Florida Keys. There you're dealing with very cold water, different types of animals. There's bull kelp. There are rainforest actually adjacent to the sanctuary. So it's very rugged, I guess, is the way to describe that sanctuary because there are huge rocks out in the water and the waves crashing on them. But then there are places that you can actually just walk on the beach and then get into that sanctuary. So very special place, different type of conservation, you're going to see a lot of different species, different whale species that you're not going to see in the Florida Keys. So even from a citizen science, from a marine debris, from an ecotourism, to use that phrase, type of an aspect, you're still getting into the sanctuary to protect, to conserve, just a totally different look. Same thing with Monterey. So Monterey, you think kelp. You immediately think kelp. And you can see that from anywhere in Monterey, no matter what hotel you're pretty much in, you can see the kelp beds. So you can get out on a kayak, you can get out on a paddle board. We have a very active Friends of the Monterey Bay National Marine Sanctuary out there. And they do beach cleanups. They work with a lot of the local community members to get all those millions of tourists that visit Monterey into the sanctuary. But again, we're talking cold water, we're talking deep water, we're talking different species, different types of sharks. So really educating and then getting people out there on the water. Then you've got others like Flower Garden Bank. That's off the coast of Texas. Completely different. There are coral heads there that are as big as a VW beetle.
Wow.
Huge. And they're really deep. So for the average person, getting out there is more challenging. Mm-hmm. And that's where we have created some of the VR, the virtual reality experience, so that you can put on a VR headset and then you can literally take a look around all of this great stuff, that the ecosystems that people just don't see because it's so deep. But there's still areas that we have to protect. And interestingly enough, if you talk to anybody from Texas, 20% of their coastline is on the water, and that's the sanctuary. And that's what they're so excited about. They want to protect it. Commercial fishermen in that area, all a part of the Sanctuary Advisory Council, because they know the species that they rely on for tourism, for charter boats, the red snapper, some key iconic fishery species. They have to have the health of that ecosystem that is the sanctuary to have the health of their community. Mm-hmm. So lots of different types of sanctuaries, which is what makes the sanctuary system so unique. Even if you go up to Boston, which is Stellwagen Bank, they're going to tell you the most important thing to them that helps keep their sanctuary aware in the minds of people is whale watching tours. They want people to get out there and see all the humpbacks that come through that National Marine Sanctuary, because they are important to the ecosystem, and getting the tourist out there to participate. And even if they're logging in something in a whale alert app to say, I saw this whale here, they are a part of that ambassadorship, if you will.
Mm. And that's a great example of citizen science too, logging those sightings that you see. And especially when they go to open source databases, that's so helpful for so many different aspects of science.
We couldn't do a lot that we do without citizens and without the tourist and without their participation, because if it is open access, which it is, and we think of it like a park, a national park, when you go into a national park, you want to be a part of everything. You want to learn from the interpretive guides. You want to understand what's happening there. And we want the same thing. And whether you're on a whale count in Hawaii and Humpback Islands, really literally counting those whales, or if you're on a kayak with Cortney helping get marine debris out of the mangroves, citizen science is such an important avenue for us. It can't always be the PhD scientist who's underwater being able to gather all this data. They don't have enough manpower, and we don't have as many scientists that we can put out there. But citizen science and volunteerism, if you will, are the bread and butter of sanctuaries.
Yeah, that's a great way to expand data collection. And it seems like a win-win for everyone. The scientists get extra samples being either documented or collected, and then people actually get to hands-on participate in science, be a marine biologist for a day, a weekend, a week, however long it is. But it's a great way to feel connected to the ocean space or to whichever sanctuary you're in. So I love that. And Cortney, can we talk about some of the science that's going on in the Florida Keys National Marine Sanctuary? So especially in your role with plastic pollution, but maybe in general to some of the other types of science and exploration that are going on in the sanctuary where you are.
Yeah, definitely. So for us with marine debris, it's really important to understand, not just get it out. but understand where it's coming from, where it's accumulating, what the effects are of this marine debris. We have all of our dive operators collect the data, what they picked up, where they picked it up from. And then we have that in an open source data set that allows anyone to study from it. As an example, I had a PhD student studying what types of marine organisms, all those macro life, accumulate in marine debris and call it a new home. This is animals that should be living in shells or under rocks and natural spaces like that. So she was studying how these small organisms are affected because now they're using marine debris as a home. And then once that's pulled out of the ocean as it should be, where does that leave them? The fact that it's an open source data set, it opens the door for anyone to use the data to study any aspect of marine debris, which is awesome. Past that, though, that's just one little area is marine debris. Past that, we have so many partners working on coral science and seagrass beds. We have coral restoration practitioners, probably, I'm going to take a guess and say at least 5 of them here in the Florida Keys, who all have a different niche. And so some study what is the water quality going to be 50 years from now, and which corals are going to survive that, which ones should we put out. And then we have others that just put coral out in numbers because we need to build the reef right now as it is. And so there's a lot of opportunity for the community to be involved in any of these programs. And like you and TJ were just saying, it's about strength in numbers. You can put a few scientists out there to do some work, but when you add the community and the visitors, you can get a lot more done, but you're also spreading awareness. And awareness and education is really what's going to bring people to care about these problems, fund these problems, hands-on, be involved in these problems. And that's where you're really going to make the difference.
And I would say there has been a massive undertaking for the last 5 years for coral, and Cortney touched on that. It's called Mission Iconic Reefs. And a large part of that was outplanting. So putting coral out there to try to reestablish this reef, to get it healthy, because there are so many issues like water quality and storm damage and rising temperatures. And those practitioners have had to pivot a lot. We had a massive heat wave that most people are aware of that happened a couple of years ago that devastated that coral reef. The water temperatures, people like to equate it to a bathtub because it was that warm. So a lot of those practitioners now are having to think, are there different types of corals that are more resistant? So they're learning from some of these harmful events, these catastrophic events. How do we pivot? What do we grow now on land that we can eventually plant on that reef? And there's some amazing science, obviously, that goes into that. People can see some of these labs firsthand to understand what coral propagation actually looks like. How are they growing them? But going back to that citizen science side, and Cortney touched on this earlier, I really think the iconic reef guardians, which again, that's that guardian aspect of that whole big overarching scientist project, which is Mission Iconic Reefs, where people can actually swim through, understand why they are growing coral on trees. So you call it a coral tree. It's not actually a tree under there, but that's exactly what it looks like. It's lines in the water where they're growing different types of coral. And with a passive and an active reef experience, where passive, you're just swimming through, active, you're actually getting to participate, where you're removing snails to keep them healthy. As Cortney said, eventually, hopefully planting some of those corals. It's a way to, as you said, literally be a scientist for a day. And it's such a cool program that most people aren't aware of yet because it is growing. It's in its infancy stage. And that's why it's a part of our tourism, our Sanctuary Guardians program now, because we want to get people into the water so that they can interact. They can be a part of help. And to me, that's a double win, if you will, between having the marine debris side, which can be very active for a tourist or a citizen and the local community. But then you've also got the stewardship with Iconic Reef Guardians, where you can get into the water and see the science that's taking place. So you've got the double bang there, which I think is really important.
Yeah, those sound like amazing citizen science initiatives. I love the story about the coral trees. I know my first time I saw one, it's just mind blowing to see these little bits of what look like bone almost dangling in the water column. But all of them have so many polyps on them. There's so much life hanging, and it's really cool. I would love to go back, maybe 3-4 years from now, from the time I last saw a coral tree in the Bahamas, and go see what it looks like. That would be so interesting. So it's great that you provide those opportunities and things for people to look forward to.
You don't need to wait 3 or 4 years, Katie. Come on. We know people. Let's get you in the water. If you don't want to dive, we'll get you snorkeling up above, but come on down.
Amazing. Well, speaking of, I heard all about the expedition that happened with Courtney and my colleague Aubrey in the National Marine Sanctuary down in the Florida Keys recently. But Courtney, I would love to hear your perspective. What exactly happened on this expedition? And I guess just before we jump in, a little bit of context. So SeaKeepers provides vessel support for scientists by connecting them with some of our partnered yacht owners or sailboat owners who just want to support marine science. And we were able to find a really unique vessel for you all to go out in the Keys and do some field work. So I would love to hear about your experience and what you guys did.
I don't think a really unique vessel begins to describe how amazing this sailboat was. Doug, the owner of SV Seeker, brought us the most incredible, perfect boat. I could go on and on about his boat. I know that's not what we're here to talk about. But what an amazing human being. Him and his fiance, they were an incredible match. We have to thank you, SeaKeepers, so much for bringing them to the table. They just did an incredible job of helping to support this science. And they had so much fun doing it. They clearly learned a lot, which can go for everyone on the boat. I think everyone learned a lot. The mission was to collect water samples to see if microplastics and nanoplastics exist in the Florida Keys National Marine Sanctuary. And this is something that really hasn't been studied here. We looked up and down. We couldn't find where anyone had really looked at this. So it's an important thing for us to understand when you talk about our fisheries and microplastics bioaccumulating up through the food chain. It's really important to understand what our quality is. So Sail and Explore Association came over from Switzerland to do this work here. So we really appreciate that. And we just got some really amazing people together from all over and from different areas of conservation. And we put them on a boat together, and we had a bunch of citizen scientists collecting and learning about microplastic. And at the end of the day, we all walked away with the newfound knowledge of microplastic collection, but also a passion for something that we didn't know anything about going into. We understood a little bit better what the effects of these microplastics are. And we are still waiting. This was very recent. So we're waiting for the results to see what microplastic accumulation there is here in the Keys. So TBD on that. But either way, we understood the importance of researching it. And it's a ripple effect because people who didn't know anything about it now can go back to their communities and explain the importance of not using single-use plastics, because even though we can't see these microplastics with the naked eye sometimes, the nanoplastics, they have a huge effect on our ecosystem. And so that education and awareness was just the coolest part that came out of that expedition.
It sounds like such a great and unique collaboration. I'll have to link some videos of the sailboat that helped you all out to this podcast episode, because I think everyone should go check out Seeker. It's such a unique boat, and everything I heard just sounds like everyone became a small family on that trip, and we're just in it for the best of reasons to really help out and advance the protections in this area. So it's really interesting to hear you say that no one's ever really studied microplastics and nanoplastics, which microplastics are less than 5 millimeters. Is that correct in size?
Yes, I believe you're going to question me now, but I think it's 3 to 5 millimeters is microplastic. And then anything below that is nano.
Okay. I think that sounds right. Yeah, that's amazing to hear that no one's ever really studied that in the National Marine Sanctuary, the Florida Keys. I know you mentioned, you've been studying plastic pollution. So some of those larger things like TJ, you were talking about how when you look into those kind of fingers of the mangroves, you just see all the plastic in there. So I am really looking forward to hearing the results of that expedition. We'll keep everyone updated, post on SeaKeepers social medias and share papers if you all publish anything. So It's such a great effort, and it's a hard thing to learn about, to hear that there are microplastics basically everywhere. But this is the start of helping some of that, or at least getting the data so we can know how to go from here.
There are different programs that are doing microplastics testing or work within other sanctuaries. But this is obviously the model we want to replicate. We'd love to see this go up the coast of Georgia, where we can get some folks out there, take some citizen science data, obviously on this vessel, because as Cortney said, it was literally designed for something like this. I wish I would have been able to go. I saw the pictures of the videos and I was like, oh man, I want to do that next year. I want to do that, not in my capacity as a conservation director, but just as a citizen. I want to participate. So that's our goal. Is it's not a one and done. It's how can we keep supporting this work over time in multiple locations.
You said it was a unique collaboration of people, and I just wanted to touch on that because it really, really was. So Sail and Explore Association, they're not an advocacy group. They're just a science group. And so they make that very clear so that everyone understands that they're just providing you with raw data. What you do with it from there is up to you. And so getting the National Marine Sanctuary Foundation on a boat with them and in partnership with them to see this raw data then allows us to act as advocates and push for policy change where we can. So yeah, it's really important to get these various groups together.
That's so great to hear. And I hope we can assist with more expeditions in the future. We can get you guys going all up the coast. So if anyone who owns a vessel is interested and wants to help out with microplastics or other types of scientific investigations in our national marine sanctuaries, please reach out to SeaKeepers. We'll get you guys connected to TJ and Cortney.
And thank you, Katie. I mean, and all of SeaKeepers, because this was a labor of love of trying to put this whole collaboration together. And you guys made it happen.
You really did.
After it to try to find the right vessel for this project. And your sphere of people stepped up to make this happen. We can't thank you enough on behalf of the foundation.
Thank you all. I mean, we're so happy and excited to support the work that you do. And you're so right. It took a while for us to get this collaboration going. We've been chatting for a while just about how we could possibly work together, what we could do. And I think this first expedition was an amazing example of the way different communities can come together and collaborate. And speaking of us collaborating, I am really looking forward to seeing you all at Capitol Hill Ocean Week coming up very soon here. We're recording this episode in May, but it'll actually be released while we're in Washington, D.C. together for that. So, TJ, I'd love to hear a little bit about what Capitol Hill Ocean Week is.
So it's very special, and I'm glad that you brought this up. This is a premier event that we host every single year. We consider it to be our signature event, if you will. This year it is June 3rd and 4th. And it is free. It's open to the public. We really examine what are the main current things that are happening in the marine and coastal environment. And also, what are some of the policy issues that we are seeing spring up? It's our time to gather people together in one place where you typically don't have that opportunity, and then open it up to everyone who wants to participate. So this year we're calling it the next wave. So it's really looking at what are the challenges, and then how do we harness all of these people that have the collective resources, time, funding, interest to take action, to look at innovation, because these great spaces are so unique and so different. And everybody brings something different to the table, whether you're thinking of commercial fishermen or someone from a different sector within the maritime industry, within the seafood community. Everybody brings something different to the table when you want to think of those ripple effects that Cortney was talking about earlier. So if we identify some of the areas around transformation of science, culture and heritage, climate action, all of that needs to be inspired by a collaborative or a collection of folks who really want to challenge. They want to disrupt a little bit. They want to lead a little bit. And as we call them, they are the true wave makers. So it's an opportunity for everyone to come participate. And we do this at this time of year because it really leads up to World Ocean Day. So it's kind of that tip off, if you will, because we want everyone celebrating the ocean and thinking about those action steps, whether it be citizen science, whether it be policy, and you want to reach out to someone to say, yes, save our sanctuaries. You're my congressman, and I want you to help protect these treasured waters. So many ways to be active, and Capitol Hill Ocean Week it's the catalyst, if you will, to start so many conversations.
And I did attend last year. Last year was my first time attending Capitol Hill Ocean Week. And I was amazed at the diversity of people there. There were storytellers, there's scientists, there's policymakers. I went to a meeting in the Capitol building. I heard stories about people's personal connections. It's not all scientific. It's the ways in which people connect to the ocean and have found themselves through the ocean or reconnected to themselves and their culture. So I learned so much. And I actually, last year, I brought my mom with me who lives in Colorado, and she loved it. It was her first time attending an ocean conservation conference, I would say. And she learned so much. She went home back to Colorado and told all of her friends. She's a teacher, an English teacher, so she told all of her students. And that was really exciting. I mean, just to see how those stories and this conference that you all put on really does reach all corners of this country and probably more, hopefully the world. I think there's a lot of people who will be tuning in this year.
I think there will be. And there are virtual options where people can listen in and participate so that they can be a part of the event. But you're right. So when I started going, it was an older subset of people. But now the youth is so engaged in Capitol Hill Oceans Week because they have such an important voice. And the youthful population is doing so much in this space that they need to have a platform to be able to speak, whether it's on innovation, whether it's on citizen science that they're doing, whether it's on their platform, because so many youth have their own platform, whether it's through a podcast or some other outlet specific to social media. They are raising the voice. They are the change makers in this space. So we encourage everybody to come join us at Capitol Hill Oceans Week. That's where I met you last year. And that's really where we dove into this collaboration, which has gotten us to this point. So that just shows you a little bit of the sidebar power of Capitol Hill Oceans Week when we really think about those collaborations.
Absolutely. And it's a wonderful community. Cortney, will you be there this year?
I don't think I'll be there this year. The summertime in the Florida Keys is a lot going on. That's when all of our visitors are here. And so we are up to our eyeballs in marine debris work. So I will be on the ground.
Well, that's good. We'll miss you, but that's such important work. So I'm looking forward to hearing how that goes.
Yes, definitely.
All right. I have one final question for you all. Now, if there was one piece of advice you could give someone, anyone based anywhere in this country, to help out with the ocean in some way or another, what is that one piece of advice, or what is one small thing anyone can do to protect our oceans moving forward?
For me, I would say it's really just care. It all starts with what you care about. And so if you get in our sanctuaries, come and get into our sanctuaries, you're going to learn to love them. And that's something that as a dive instructor, I also believe wholeheartedly is taking people underwater to look at the fish, the coral, whatever it is that excites them will change something inside of them. So come and get into the sanctuaries. That's going to teach you to care about those spaces. And that's what's going to make you want to protect them.
And I love that even if you're not scuba certified, you can join in a virtual reality and go see some of those sanctuaries. That's amazing how accessible you've made it all for everyone.
Absolutely.
I would echo Cortney. I think it's come see. Once you see it, the ocean can be a very nebulous or gray space to folks. You drive down the coastline, and even though we call them the national parks, a national park you can walk into and you can see. If you're driving down the coastline, all you see are just maybe waves and pretty much the soft rolling of what looks like it's just a level surface. But when you look underneath, whether you are in a kayak, whether you're on a boat, whether you're scuba diving, whatever that might be, all of a sudden you realize there's a whole world here. And once you see that world, it's impossible to forget it. And that's where we need ambassadors. We need people to speak up. We need people to learn, engage within their communities. If you're in Colorado or Chattanooga, you should be talking about why it's important to protect these ecosystems and the whole entirety of the ocean. We obviously focus on national marine sanctuaries, but we are a blue planet. And that means we have more ocean than we do land. So really feeling connected, and that's the access. Get in, see it, feel it, touch it, enjoy it. And you can also go to our website. There are other ways that people can just take action of how they want to support national marine sanctuaries. Marinesanctuary.org can give you all the information on what you can do, whether it's Cortney's program or the Iconic Reef Guardians program, or just ways that you can help protect this. So be a voice. We need people's voices.
And especially with World Oceans Day coming up, I'd encourage everyone to go out into nature, go out to your oceans, whether that's in person if you're lucky enough, or through something like virtual reality with the National Marine Sanctuary Foundation. But please just take a minute on World Oceans Day, June 8th, to go and appreciate our ocean, and especially everything it does for our planet. Because TJ, you're right, it's a blue planet. The ocean is not too big to fail, as we hear sometimes. It is at risk and we need it. So it's a great opportunity to go out and appreciate everything it is.
One thing when we're talking about access and getting in and being that ambassador, we recently had designated National Marine Sanctuary Day. Something we were working toward. We're really excited about it, but it is a day where you will see are videos. So if you can't get into the ocean, you can't get in physically to a sanctuary, National Marine Sanctuary Day, October 23rd, you can see, go to social media, go to our website, start exploring what the beauty of national marine sanctuaries are. And if you can get into a sanctuary, look on our website. It's going to tell you all the different activities taking place in all 18 national marine sanctuaries. So come visit us.
Congratulations. That's exciting. So I'm glad we can celebrate on World Oceans Day, at Capitol Hill Ocean Week, and then for National Marine Sanctuary Day. Well, thank you both so much for joining this conversation. I can't wait to see you, TJ, in DC coming up soon. Cortney, I hope to see you in the Florida Keys. Maybe we'll get out on another expedition.
I hope so. It was amazing.
Thank you, Katie, for all that you guys do and your support of the foundation, your support of National Marine Sanctuaries, and looking forward to seeing you in person. It'll be here before we know it. Everyone come join us. You can meet Katie and myself in person, and we'll show a little video of Cortney while she's underwater picking up trash.
Maybe we bring a flat Stanley.
There we go.
Well, thank you again so much. I look forward to our continued partnership. I can't wait to see what we can do for the ocean. Thanks for tuning in to this episode of SeaKeepers Voyages of Discovery. Join us next time for a deep dive into how Jaws shaped the public's perception of sharks and how that fear turned into fascination among scientists and conservationists. Until then, fair winds and following seas.